as we cut to these players. Baris Akcos, Chromie on the left, and of course Eric Rios on the right.
There they are, getting into position, game faces on, ready to play each other. And yes, we'll shortly be getting into their team preview. Of course, these players, it's an open team sheet format. They'll be able to see the teams that each player is running, which Pokemon item, ability, etc. They won't be able to see how the Pokemon are trained, whether they're particularly offensive or defensive. So there are still very much mind games at play. And of course, you don't know what your opponent's thinking. Sure, you can see their team, but you don't know how they're going to lead. It's not like you have Mind Reader on as an ability on you.
Certainly not. Maybe Terra Psychic could be a way to expand your vision of what could come next. But certainly right. And one of these things that we have different in this season, of course, is nothing new now. Is that open team sheet format? And one of the things that we always used to say when we were team building and preparing for these tournaments back in the day was, information, and if my opponent knows my team, they still have to beat me when I'm using it, knowing all of the ins and outs, all of the intricacies, and knowing how to approach every single matchup. So this should be a fantastic game and fantastic achievements all round.
Fantastic achievements all round, absolutely. Eric's, of course, looking slightly more recent. Utrecht Special Event Champion, there he is for 2023, World's Top 16 last year. Baris, 2016 to 2017, his achievements there, and it's so cool to see him continue to play the game. He's got that legacy experience, and he's rocking that leopard print shirt, which might be a little early clue as to a certain Pokemon on his team.
It certainly could be. I'm really excited to see that. And in fact, actually, if you go over to the Pokemon Go stream at any point during the day, the casters over there are rocking a little bit of leopard print as well. So a nice little wardrobe addition to the streams here at Malmö.
Yeah, that's not a memo I got, Ben. I don't know if you did, but I'm not wearing a leopard print tie. But yes, these players are just getting ready to start this match. And for Baris going up against Eric, a player who's really made a name for themselves. I'd argue, Ben, that Eric's already a household name in the VGC community, and going up against each other, Baris, he's got that to contend with, but on the other hand, Eric doesn't want to get complacent. That's an easy way to get defeated if you rest on your laurels and think, well, I'm going to win because I've won so many things recently.
And certainly, and both of these players, thinking back to all of the tournaments that I've seen them play over the years, both of these players are very conservative in the way that they play the game. Not necessarily that they won't make a read, not that they won't predict what their opponent's doing, but there's that difference between this is just the right thing to do and actually in this situation I need to use all of the tools at my disposal. Looking at Baris's tools, I'm just immediately drawn to that Jump Pluff there.
There it is, Jump Pluff, a Pokemon that we've seen really rise to the fore, and no one expected it, especially at the Portland Regionals won by Joseph Ugarte. Piloting it to success, but it has that really useful support option with Tailwind as well as Encore, and in the sun with its Chlorophyll ability that the Torkoal can set up, it's going to be super speedy, dishing out those supportive moves. But we also can't ignore that Leaf Storm on the Jump Off as well. It's really big damage, and there is the Chien Pao, that leopard call out that we were talking about.
Absolutely, and next to it, the Torkoal there. I'm spotting a move that we usually see on a different Pokemon, one of our resident treasures of Ruin. Torkoal not quite a Ting-Lu, but looking like it's trying to do its best in this event for Baris. And, in those situations, it's always nice to have that last-ditch effort to try and get that one-hit knockout. Moving over to Eric, we're seeing a pretty standard composition, a very balanced, very Eric, I'm going to say, in the way that Eric likes to play the game. And, you're looking at the Gyarados switching in composition, in comparison, should I say, to things like the Palafin that's trying to do damage. This Gyarados is trying to keep Eric in the game as long as possible.
Absolutely. I mean, it certainly provides some chip damage with that Waterfall, but yes, it's a Gyarados with Thunder Wave and Taunt, which we did see in Game 1 as well. And what something I'm fascinated by, Ben, is we still haven't seen a Palafin yet. There was no Palafin in Round 1. We saw an Arcanine in Round 1. We certainly have the Fluttermane and the Amoonguss, though. Those Pokemon are here to stay. We saw in the stats earlier that those are currently the top 2 used Pokemon, and those top 2 are way ahead of everything else that follows. So yeah, and its Booster Energy is the item of choice on Eric's Fluttermane, as well as Substitute as a move choice, which is something we've seen coming up certainly around EUIC.
It's a really strong option. We saw a little bit of that in Portland. We've seen a little bit of that in EUIC as well. Players just trying to adopt this strategy to keep their Flutter mains on the field. But the really, really crucial thing, and the little bit of the opportunity cost for that, is that you have to either drop Dazzling Gleam or Moonblast or Shadow Ball. All of those have really good utility in the different situations that they're relevant. So you have to decide, like, hey, do I drop spread damage as Eric has done? Maybe that means that something like a Moongus is a little bit more threatening to my team, and how do I instead cover for that kind of potential weakness?
Yeah, absolutely. And hey, trainers, it's time to vote for your winner in the Twitch poll below. Who do you think is going to claim this victory? Let us know. We'd love to see your thoughts and see if they are borne out in the predictions. Of course, in round one, the Twitch poll went for Hippolyte, but he lost, so anything can happen, trainers. It's currently looking in Eric's favor, but who knows what could happen in this round two?
Absolutely. Never, ever give Baris any opportunity to tell people that, you know, he's actually here and he's going to be winning a game. He's certainly a character that wants to show his all at these tournaments, and certainly hasn't had exactly the same kind of season that Eric has had, and you know, such a recent special event champion. But he's certainly here to play, I'm sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And can Eric go all the way again? We will have to see. But I'm really fascinated to see Baris's jump off put in some work, perhaps. And Eric, known for his more balanced teams, that's certainly what he brought to Utrecht, especially during a certain semi-final between him and Marco, which went over an hour long. But let's get into this game. And it's Ting Lu and the Iron Hands for Eric, and for Baris, he's going with King Gambit and Torkoal leading.
Indeed, and that King Gambit is already looking pretty threatened in front of a Ting Lu and a Iron Hands as well. A really defensive kind of lead there coming out from Eric, not wanting to give away too much board position, utilizing that Ting Lu's Vessel of Ruin ability, as well as the fake out that can come out from this Iron Hands, to just put a little pause on what Baris is trying to get started in this match. Of course, the King Gambit is going to be able to maybe put a little bit of late game pressure on, but I wouldn't be surprised to see Baris trying to do a little bit of adjustment here in turn one and get that Torkoal and King Gambit in a better position later in the match.
Terra Psychic Ben strikes again, as that is exactly what Baris does with Great Tusk, joining the field in place of King Gambit. And of course, because the sun is there, it is able to activate Great Tusk's Protosynthesis. It's a Drain Punch coming out from Iron Hands into the Great Tusk, which it takes relatively well. Stomping Tantrum going into Great Tusk as well, so it was doubling up onto what was the King Gambit there. But Ting Lu avoids the move that was coming out from Torkoal. That was a Fisher. Am I right? Coming out from Torkoal there, and yes, Ting Lu keeps herself safe.
Actually, an overheat coming out from that Torkoal. Both moves can miss, so that's what we saw. And yeah, I mean, you know, it's going to have started the process of, you know, dropping this Ting Lu stats just a little bit further down. Of course, from Eric's side, there's always that Gyarados in the back, and Baris has to be really careful of that. You know, there is an attack boost on Baris's Great Tusk, but with an Intimidate coming onto the field, is this the Gyarados? Yes, it is coming out here. Going to be dropping the attack of the Great Tusk on Baris's side of the field and stopping it doing quite as much damage.
Quite as much damage, but in my experience, even with an Intimidate drop, Booster Energy attack still deals significant damage. But Torkoal switched out by its eject pack there, so something else is going to be joining the field for Baris. Torkoal is there to set up the sun for Baris and then come back as quickly as possible. So he'll be deciding which Pokemon to bring in from the back to join the field here against Ting Lu and Gyarados.
And it's the Fluttermane coming out there, rocking the choice specs. And one of the things that this particular archetype that Baris is running is really good at, using that eject pack to great effect to just get the right Pokemon on the field at the right time. Ting Lu gets that Protect going and doesn't take, therefore, any damage from Headlong Rush coming in from that Great Tusk.
Yeah, certainly an unfortunate miss from Torkoal with its overheat in turn one into that Ting Lu, because in the sun it would have dealt some significant damage. Of course, Ting Lu reduces the special attack of all other Pokemon on the field, but it's still, you know, any chip you can get onto a Pokemon as bulky as Ting Lu really does pay dividends, especially a Ting Lu with the Leftovers item, which can keep healing itself up as the game goes on. These players are locking in these moves. Eric being being slow and steady once again, living up to his name, wanting to get every turn right, and it's Gyarados coming out in favor of Iron Hands.
And Baris just nodding along there, knowing that that switch was certainly a potential, a little bit of a sneak peek. I think that Flutter Mane did lock into Thunderbolt there, and that's going to be a fantastic thing for the Flutter Mane to have switched into against that Gyarados. Less so against the Iron Hands, but certainly more so against that Ting Lu that's just turned into a water type.
Ooh.
Oh,
what
a way.
Oh my goodness, headlong rush going straight into the Iron Hands, bringing it down to very low health once again, but at the cost of reducing its defensive stats. Iron Hands is able to take the Thunderbolt really quite well from Flutter Mane, but it's a knockout in response onto Flutter Mane with a heavy slam from Eric's Ting Lu. So yes, the knockouts are coming. Iron Hands is nearly all the way down and out for the count.
That is a really big read there coming out from Baris. Didn't quite pay off in the way that Baris probably wanted it to, but every time that you use a ground move into something like Gyarados that's immune to it because of its flying typing, you've got to be thinking, oh, is this the right move to be using? And it certainly was with the Iron Hands. I mean, that's definitely a lot of damage onto a Pokemon that it's really difficult for Baris's team to be able to get damage onto. The thing I'm looking at now is that Ting Lu on Eric's side of the field. That Thunderbolt that the Flutter Mane locked itself into is no longer available, and now that Ting Lu on Eric's side of the field is looking like it's going to be sitting there for quite a while, not feeling too threatened.
Yeah, absolutely. It can just sit there and dish out some damage. Of course, King Gambit doesn't love a fighting type move from Iron Hands or indeed a ground type move from Ting Lu. So it's an interesting position for that King Gambit to be in. And Baris is just weighing up his options here. But we're getting into the next turn. Great Tusk is going to withdraw a fairly positional game at the moment. Players wanting to get their Pokemon in the right spot. Torkoal rejoins the field, and it's a Terror in response coming out from Baris. So that will be going into his King Gambit, so hopefully able to keep himself safer. I was about to say from the ground type moves from the Ting Lu, but being Terrafire, oh no sir, but it will certainly be safer from any fighting type moves from Iron Hands. It's Fake Out going into Baris's Torkoal. It's switched in this turn, so wouldn't have been dealing any damage anyway, but it's a fire type Terra Blast coming out from King Gambit, which is going to be easily enough, of course, to pick up this very low health Iron Hands.
That's probably one of the best looking Terra Blasts that I've ever seen there, coming out from that King Gambit. Just love the way that it's sparkling in this match. Stomping Tantrum coming from the Ting Lu, not into that King Gambit, but instead into the Torkoal on the switch in, and that's going to be really big because one of the last ways that Baris has the opportunity to be able to knock out that Ting Lu is probably going to be the Fissure onto the Torkoal. So seeing it now quite low health with the Chi-Yu coming in from Eric's side of the field, it's going to be pretty uphill for Baris to find a way to navigate to a point where he can take this game one.
This is really interesting, Ben, because you don't often want Ting Lu and Chi-Yu next to each other on the field.
Right,
they have contradictory abilities, with Ting Lu reducing special attack, Chi-Yu reducing special defense. So I wouldn't be surprised if he a switch from Eric here, depending on which Pokemon he wants to go for the attack, or maybe he will just keep everything nice and neutral and go on the offensive with both. But certainly not two Pokemon you tend to see out at the same time.
Really interesting, though, how that power interaction works as a Sucker Punch does come in and connect with the Ting Lu. So going to be an attack this turn coming out from it. It's going to be the Stomping Tantrum, but oh my god, that Torkoal surviving with just a sliver of health. King Gambit taking the move and Fissure not quite making its mark onto the Ting Lu. That was the one opportunity that Baris really has, and Eric does have some perfectly accurate moves on his side of the field that I think he's going to be definitely feeling like he wants to utilize in this moment.
Yeah, when you're a player and you see Fissure coming into your own Pokemon, there's always that hold your breath moment of, oh, really, is this going to go down immediately? But fortunately, not for Eric on this particular turn. And he did keep both the Ting Lu and the Chi-Yu out here. But Torkoal surviving on 2 HP. We did see that it has that helping hand as it's going for here. So priority move, so even if it goes down this turn, it will be able to get the helping hand off, boosting King Gambit's damage output. And it's a Sucker Punch into Ting Lu, bring it down to about half its health as Heat Wave connects onto both Torkoal and King Gambit. Not very much damage, but Torkoal only being on 2 HP, that is of course enough for the knockout.
Certainly most moves would have been able to pick that up, as a Stomping Tantrum does pick up the KO on Baris's King Gambit. I believe there's only the Great Tusk in the back now, which actually not a bad Pokemon to have in this position. It's so powerful, but there is that Gyarados in the back. That's going to be what's causing the biggest issue for Baris here. If that Thunderbolt in the early game was able to connect with that Gyarados and it wasn't on the field, maybe this Great Tusk would be able to clinch out the game with some key Earthquake. We know that Chi-Yu is carrying a safety goggles on Eric's side, so there's no focus sash to contend with, and maybe Ting-Lu could be in range of an Earthquake. Maybe not, but, you know, we'll have to see if it's a move that comes out.
Well, the thing is, Baris's Great Tusk is rocking that Choice Scarf, so whatever it locks into now is going to be stuck with it, because it cannot switch out, being the last Pokemon on Baris's team. But we did see that Great Tusk has Rock Slide, so that is at least able to do some damage to the Gyarados, and a little bit of chip damage to both Pokemon there. Stomping Tantrum coming out into Great Tusk, whittling away at the Great Tusk. It seems like Baris's Great Tusk is having quite a lot asked of it in this late game.
We do have a saying in the video game community, where there's a rock slide, there's a way. You know, there's quite a few rock slides left to go, so maybe a way would be slightly generous in this position. Of course, Baris, being an experienced player, a veteran of VGC, he knows that, does forfeit, and the game goes to Eric Rios.
It does, yeah. He would have needed about 7 flinches, I reckon, that Great Tusk.
Yeah, okay. Carry the 2, drop the 1. Yeah, 7 sounds about right.
Caster calculations going on in full force behind the desk here. But yes, Eric, the most recent special event champion in Europe with Utrecht, does take out that game 1. So going into game 2, you know, Eric's feeling fairly confident there. Baris has a little bit of adjustments to make. What would you like to see, Ben?
Well, I think the lead is where I'd like to see the main adjustment for Baris. This team, as a composition, does have a lot of tools to be able to switch and get into a great place, but some of the pieces, like that Fluttermane, they can't take a heavy slam from Ting-Lu, and you've got to be really careful when you bring that in, how you bring it in, and also put the pressure onto Eric's side of the field in order to get some damage off. And really, pressuring that Ting-Lu on Eric's side of the field, I think, is critical for Baris's game plan.
Right, absolutely. The Ting-Lu was able to stick around for a very long time for Eric, and it's a Pokemon that's really quite difficult to take out. There is the Thunderbolt on the Fluttermane. It's just, you know, being able to catch the Terror, because Thunderbolt going into a Ting-Lu that hasn't terrestrialized is going to do nothing. So it's a really difficult call to make. It
certainly is. And, you know, thinking about the leads here, I'd like to see Baris really utilize that jump pluff a little bit more coming in. The Chi-Yu is immune to it. That's with the safety goggles, or immune to the sleep at least. But one of the things that's really nice about the jump pluff is that Leaf Storm. Okay, it's going to be power dropped by the Ting-Lu on Eric's side of the field, but it doesn't matter whether Eric is a regular Ting-Lu or is terrestrialized into water. It can still hit for super effective damage, as well as being able to spread a little bit of status conditions onto Eric's side of the field and just slow the pace of the game down. You get that Gyarados asleep, you get the Iron Hands asleep, suddenly you've got a little bit more room to breathe.
Yeah, absolutely. It's Sleep Powder can be a really good way to get your way back into a game, and maybe that's something that Baris needs to rely on going into this game too. Again, it wouldn't be able to affect the Chi-Yu with its safety goggles, but Jump Pluff with the offense, slightly with the Leaf Storm, as well as its ample supportive capabilities. And it's Ting-Lu and Chi-Yu again for Eric. It's clearly a lead he liked, even though they have contradictory abilities. And Torkoal and Fluttermane joining the field for Baris. I
like the lead here from Baris a little bit more. The Torkoal on Baris's side of the field is going to be able to maybe get an overheat off, do a little bit of damage, less threatened by the Ting-Lu and Chi-Yu in the early game when it's at full health. A little bit later on, you might have to trade a little bit of damage, but you don't mind the Torkoal going to a little bit lower HP in the early game. I think you kind of want to just get some damage off onto the field if you're Baris and start pushing the game a little bit in your favor.
Yeah, and if he's going for overheat on this turn, we'll have to see if it connects this time, because obviously in game 1 on that turn 1, it did not. But with Chi-Yu and the sun being set up, it would be able to dish out some big heat waves, and of course it activates Fluttermane's photosynthesis. But in fact, Fluttermane is going to retreat for Baris in favor of that Great Tusk, which we saw stick around for so long in game 1.
I'm not completely convinced that it's going to be sticking around for as long in this game. In front of a Chi Yu is something that Great Tusk, not known for its specially defensive stats, likes to be in front of. An early terror, though, coming out from this Ting Lu. Probably just trying to adjust, maybe fearing a Moonblast coming out from that Choice Scarf. Choice Specs, in fact, Fluttermane, as well as the Moonblast that it could afford. Chi Yu just going for a Protect, keeping it a little bit more consistent, so a great switch in there for Baris, and an Overheat coming into the Ting Lu does find its mark, but because of that Terror, doesn't manage to do as much damage as I think Baris would have hoped.
At least it connected this turn, but no, it did not. It is switching out thanks to its eject pack. And of course, Fluttermane that Baris does have access to that Thunderbolt, and Ting Lu has committed the Terror, so he knows that Thunderbolt would be super effective into that. But hovering over the King Gambit, it seems like it might be that joining the field instead for Baris. Useful information to have in your back pocket going into future turns. But King Gambit joining the field, which again is an interesting choice when you have a Fire type and a Ground type staring you down.
And just showing the flexibility of Baris' team. Eric, you know, just keeping himself safe, keeping his Pokemon in a good position to be able to dish out as much damage as possible. Committing that Terror to the Ting Lu, that's going to mean that Chi Yu, without a Focus Sash, is probably not going to be able to survive any attacks coming out from the Great Tusk that has just switched in for Baris. So a really small change in terms of the damage that it did from turn 1. But in terms of board position, we've had a big shift in what's causing the most threat on the field right now.
Yeah, absolutely. King Gambit has now joined Great Tusk next to it there. And, you know, Torkoal and Fluttermane obviously can be very offensive as well. But I think speed will be crucial going into this game, seeing who will be able to knock out who first, because it's very offensive for both trainers. And it's going to be a Terror coming out for Baris' King Gambit once again, going into that Fire type, so it's certainly more resistant to Fire type moves now, but not so much Ground that could be coming out from Ting Lu. Choice Scarf, Great Tusk with a Rock Slide onto Eric's Pokemon. Maybe there'll be a flinch at some point, but not this turn. It's very...
survives.
Oh, and it's a critical hit onto King Gambit, but Great Tusk survives with very low health. Assurance going up into Chi Yu, and it is down and out. But yes, Great Tusk is sticking around for another turn on very low health.
And a Ruination does manage to meet its mark onto King Gambit, just taking half of the remaining health away from that King Gambit. And you know what? I've got to be honest with you, Charlie. I was looking for a flinch there.
Yeah,
just a little bit of a crowd pleaser to get us started in Malmö, but doesn't come out. Ruination comes in, and that's going to be really important actually for Eric, especially with this Iron Hands joining the field. That King Gambit, now that it's Terra Fire, isn't as weak to Drain Punch coming out from Iron Hands, but less than 50% health. It might as well be weak.
Yeah, a little bit dicey going into the next turn, but yes, Iron Hands joining the field as well. May well have access to that Fake Out, which would be able to render one of Baris' Pokemon null and void for the rest of the turn, but Baris instead switches out his Great Tusk and is bringing in Torkoal once again. The sun is already up, so it won't be setting the sun anymore. In fact, it's a double switch for Baris. He's playing it incredibly well. He's keeping those two Pokemon safe, we should say, as he brings out Fluttermane to rejoin the Torkoal there. And because the sun is still up, which presumably is something that Baris has calculated for, it does get that special attack boost. Fake Out was going into the that Pokemon there, but it's because Fluttermane is Ghost type, doesn't do too much. But it seems like Eric was predicting the Fluttermane to go into the other slot where Torkoal now is, because Heavy Slam would have dealt a serious amount of damage, as we saw in that first game. But as it is, went into the Torkoal, which resists the hit.
What a fantastic way to switch for Baris. Eric playing the likely scenario. We know that both Pokemon that were on Baris' side of the field wouldn't be able to protect, so Eric had to call the slot that the Fluttermane was likely to come into to resist that Fake Out plus attack, and Baris has just called that perfectly, getting the Torkoal not taking really any damage and getting the Fluttermane in a position where it can really push and get on the offensive.
Yeah, absolutely, and this is going to be a really interesting turn because I believe I saw Baris locking in Helping Hand and Moonblast into the Iron Hand slot, which would have been a super effective hit, but of course, Gyarados is not going to appreciate taking this either. Here it is, Torkoal giving a Helping Hand to its buddy. Moonblast, will it be enough for the knockout? No, it's not. Very bulky Gyarados. It's down to about a sixth of its health, and that does activate the berry. So at least significant chip damage now onto that Gyarados. Going into the rest of the turn as Heavy Slam does connect down onto Fluttermane, and it survives! survives!
Ooh.
This time with 7 HP, so it will be sticking around for another turn to wreak havoc.
Surviving on that little health, and you would look back at game 1, how impactful it was that the Fluttermane did get knocked out that turn. It could have got another Thunderbolt onto the Ting Lu. That would have been fantastic for Baris, and wow, it's just a testament to how these trainers have trained their Pokemon, where all of these such close margins are making such a big impact.
Absolutely. It just goes to show the difference in damage rolls that can come out in this game, and that does impact the next turn going into potentially the rest of the game, because in fact Baris is keeping the Fluttermane safe in the back as King Gambit rejoins the field. It's already terastallized into the fire type, and it's Waterfall going into that slot. It's a super effective hit, but it's not enough for the knockout. Very bulky King Gambit doubling up with the Stomach Tantrum. It's another super effective hit. It is enough for the knockout. So who knows, perhaps Baris was calling a double up into that slot and wanted to get rid of the King Gambit to pave the way, give a free switch in for a Pokemon that will be in the back. But Torkoal going for the Fisher, but it's a miss into the Ting Lu. So no Fishers connecting so far, but one of these times, Ben, it may well.
I have a funny feeling that during the day we're going to see at least one Fisher animation here in Malmö. But wow, what a turn. I think this is such a great example of how Eric can take the choices that a player has used in their team building coming into these events and make most advantage of it. There's a lot of Pokemon on Baris' side of the field that cannot protect. And so what you can do with that is say, hey, look, this slot cannot play defensively on this turn. I cannot have a Pokemon not be hit by a move or waste a move, so I can just double up into those slots. But also, at the same time, Eric playing conservatively, of course, bringing that Iron Hands in to take a Rock Slide from that Great Tusk.
Yeah, Rock Slide not doing too much at all there, but Stomping Tantrum is able to respond and get rid of that Great Tusk. Torkoal, another Fisher coming out, but no, Ting Lu does manage to dodge. It's a Ting Lu that's got very good reflexes, it seems, because it's dodged 3 Fishers so far this game.
I think it's that leftovers, just giving it a little bit of extra energy, just to jump out the way of those Fishers on the way through. Fluttermane coming back in for Baris, and it's got a lot of work to do. I think, you know, if the sun was up in this position, there's maybe a little bit of an opportunity. Dazzling Gleam with the Helping Hand, the Photosynthesis boost on the special attack. Maybe there's an opportunity with critical hits to knock out the, certainly the Iron Hands, but maybe knock out that Ting Lu. That's going to be, as in game 1, the big issue for this match. Fake Out coming out, though, into the Torkoal.
Yeah, Eric does not want to be dealing with Fishers on this turn, as it is not able to move with that Fake Out. Heavy Slam picking up the Fluttermane, so he's just down to his Torkoal with a critical hit just to rub salt in the wound. It was able to deal significant damage to the Iron Hands before going down, but yeah, Torkoal flinching thanks to the Fake Out, and it's Torkoal against the world here, as Eric's Pokemon, his 3 remaining, are looking very healthy indeed, and it seems like the writing's on the wall.
It does indeed. It looks like Eric's going to be taking this match. We'll have to see how this finishes off with Baris knowingly forfeiting to Eric, the worthy victor of round 2 here at Malmö. And yeah, I'm sure Eric's feeling pretty good about how he played in that match, how he was able to navigate both a little bit of the Fisher, all of the offensive options that Baris had at his disposal. That Choice Scarf on the Great Tusk can cause trainers some issues because it's fast and it's powerful, especially boosted by the sun. So yeah, I'm sure he's very pleased to be able to have navigated that so masterfully.
Yeah, not only that, but with those Rock Slides coming out, there's always the chance of the flinch as well. So fast, powerful, and potentially keeping yourself safe for the rest of the turn. It's a really interesting technique to have there, but I think that was a masterclass in why Eric is such a well-renowned trainer. You could see just at the end of that game too there, for example, how his Pokemon were really all... the Ting Lu was in the green of its health, the Iron Hands was in the green of its health just before that last turn, and I think Gyarados in the back was just there as well. So yeah, a masterclass in cycling and keeping your Pokemon as healthy as possible.
And you could see the reason that Ting Lu has been so useful since it got introduced in Regulation Set C, because the amount of health that Gyarados had was less than a quarter, because that's when the Aguav berry that it was holding would have activated. So 25%, a quarter of its health left, and a quarter of the damage removed from the field from that Tinglu ability. So just seeing how vital those synergies are when you're crafting your team was brilliant to see.
Really brilliant to see, and a helping hand. Moonblast from Fluttermane in the sun onto that Gyarados, incredibly bulky. That's a really, really interesting survival and a really interesting calculation that clearly Eric has run multiple times. But yeah, as well as, of course, keeping his own Pokemon healthy, Eric was, given this as a game of Pokemon, needing to pick up the knockouts onto Baris. And you could just see as both of those games went on, he was doing such a masterful job of continuing to whittle away at Baris's Pokemon's health while keeping his own Pokemon relatively healthy. I mean, that's the best of both worlds.
And taking advantage of, as we were saying before, not having the option to protect on many Pokemon on Baris's side of the field. We had Choice Specs on the Fluttermane, we had Choice Scarf on the Great Tusk, we had the Assault Vest on the King Gambit, and that gives Baris a lot less options. And one of the great things about protecting VGC is that it says to your opponent, like, hey, sometimes you're not going to be successful in targeting into my Pokemon, and therefore you've got to be a little bit careful about how you target. Do you target one thing or the other? Because if you waste that one move, that one turn, it could be that you end up losing a match with just a few hit points left on your opponent's Pokemon, and that one little bit of extra damage would have been all of the difference.
Absolutely. There's a little video coming up at some point this weekend as well where I explain a little bit more about the move Protect. So stay tuned to learn more about all of the ways it can be used in this meta. But you're absolutely right, Ben. You need flexibility. Going into VGC, and looking at Eric's team, you know, he doesn't have Protect on his Amoonguss, he does on the Tinglu, he does on the Chi-Yu, he does on Gyarados, and he does on the Fluttermane as well. So that's 4 Protects for Eric versus 3 items that render Protect null and void on Baris's team. And in fact, just scanning down his team here, I can see Protect on the Chi and Pao and on the Torkoal, and that's it. So just 2 Pokemon with Protect there, and it just goes to show, you know, it's always tempting in Pokemon to just get that knockout. It's staring you in the face, you really want it, but of course your opponent may well be playing around you, and so you do need to play it slower and steadier sometimes.
Absolutely. One of the ways that players really do prepare for these tournaments, and the way that you've got to think about coming into a competitive environment, you've got to be figuring out how you want to play the game. It's all well and good your opponent having a particular set of Pokemon, you having a particular set of Pokemon, but you've really got to hone in on, do I want to be hitting fast? Do I want to be hitting offensive? Do I want to be switching around and maybe trading blows with my opponent? Or do I want to maybe like follow a little bit of a linear strategy like the hard trick room that we've seen in players like Alex Soto running in both Liverpool and Bochum all the way to the finals? Those decisions really matter.
Yeah, I'm so excited, Ben, to see a bit of Trick Room coming out today. I love some Trick Room, and we haven't seen it so far. In Game 1, there was the potential for a tailwind from Murkrow. We didn't see it come out, but reversing that speed order wreaks all kinds of havoc on the game, and there will be players today who are going for that reverse speed order option.
I think you know, having the opportunity to have a little bit of a chat to some players, I definitely ran into a few that I wanted to have a little bit of a closer look at. And I came over and was like, "Hey, you've got an open list there. Let's have a little bit of a have a little bit of a look." And I ran into Jamie Boyd, who is running a little bit of those sort of strategies. So maybe we'll see him a little bit later on. I won't reveal any more than the move Trick Room is on his team. Sure. We'll leave it at that. But let me tell you, he has the sauce.
Jamie Boyd, purveyor of fine sauce, coming to the Malmö Regional Championships today. Yeah, is that Trick Room is something I've been playing with as well, with Pokemon like a Rangaroo, being able to dish out some Instructs as well, getting a double attack onto a very threatening offensive partner Pokemon. It is just a technique that not everyone is expecting, but let's keep it at the matter at hand. Baris and Eric's game will very shortly be getting into the interview with the winner from round 2, Eric Rios. But, you know, unfortunate for Baris losing game 2, but I mean, against such a worthy opponent, he really should not be feeling too disappointed at all.
Not at all. And one of the great things about the tournament structure that we have here at Regionals now, with the increased amount of players that are getting involved and coming to participate in these events, is that it doesn't matter how well you do, as long as you get 7 wins and 2 losses at the very minimum, you're going to be making it to day 2. That's a whole new round of Swiss. And so, yeah, you can take a loss here. You can take a loss next round if you like, if you're Baris. As long as you get those 7 wins, that's what you're aiming for. And a nice, clean way to progress into day 2.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not like it all comes down to every single game and you lose one, you're out. You still have ample opportunity. And it's very early on in the day. We've only had 2 games and they've been absolute crackers. And we have 7 more coming up today, and the intensity is only going to ramp up. So, oh my goodness, I'm excited.
I'm going to add some cheese to those, I think, a little bit later, those crackers of the game. Maybe that was a little bit forced, but, you know, I'm going to try and go with it today.
What with boy sauce as well. We'll be eating well today.
Absolutely, absolutely. And these trainers, I think, you know, they're going to have to do the same to keep the energy levels up with 9 rounds of Swiss to play. Make sure you're keeping hydrated there and keeping yourself up and ready for more.
It's a really important point because the mental resilience required to play 9 rounds of Swiss in a row, it's really quite staggering. And so, yeah, hydration absolutely key, eating well really key as well, because by the later rounds of the day, if you can eke out that little bit more mental stamina than your opponent, then it could be the difference between a win and a loss.
Exactly, especially when you're 6-2 going into the last round and you know that both you and your opponent are being matched up against players of the same record. You're both fighting for that place in day 2. You're both really, really trying, and you know that one of you isn't going to make it. You don't want that to be yourself.
No, absolutely. It's such a tense atmosphere to be in, but that's why we love featuring those kinds of matches on stream. Very shortly, once again, we'll be joining Eric Rios for his winners interview, and I can't wait to hear his thoughts on that game and whether he teched for some of the moves that Baris had on his team, because again, Jumpluff is a Pokemon, for example, that we've seen rise in usage.
It's definitely a team archetype that players that will be coming into this event will be a little bit familiar of. We saw similar archetypes in Portland regionals not long ago, and I'm quite excited to see how players are adapting to the Regulation C format, because we've gone through a couple of changes here with Regulation A, Regulation B now in C, but we're starting to get to the point where the Regulation C format has been quite well developed, and we're in the stage that I think is quite fun, where you've got the established, they say, Palance, to quote a particular archetype in the community, where Palafin Amoongus Arcanine cores. Players are now starting to find ways to try and break those cores and try to establish a different way of playing in the metagame. I think it's absolutely really exciting to see.
Yeah, it's absolutely fascinating, and I'm sure, because now we have the interview ready, we'll be hearing a lot more about that from Eric. So let's throw it over to David, and you'll hear from your round 2 winner, Eric Rios.
Thank you, Charlie. My name is Dave Barlington. I'm joined by, of course, the winner of that round 2, Eric Rios. Eric, how are you feeling after that game?
I'm feeling a bit tired today, but I'm feeling good about Pokemon. So, yeah, I'm on 2-0 now, so didn't expect to do that much this weekend because I didn't test, but...
Fair enough. Well, it seems to have gone quite well for you. So even tied, even with all that championship points, a tied VGC player can still do very well. So congrats on that game.
Thank you.
Obviously, Baris seems to have been using quite a popular team recently, having like that team won the Portland Regionals. Have you prepped much against that team specifically?
Didn't prepare anything. That's the. I came here with the comfort team. I was playing at European International and the online tournaments. I was playing other games to chill before tournaments because I have my day 2 lock. So I came here to have fun, to play, and maybe take some money.
Excellent. Okay, yeah. Just another day in the life for you then, you could say. Yeah. Like, just round 2, no sweat. Excellent. So did you change anything about the team that you were using for today, or is it just kind of picked it up and go?
Yeah, I changed something like the team I was playing at European International was lefties, and now I'm playing safety aggles for the Sun and for Among Us also, because I want to maybe set up against some opposing Among Us, and I changed something like another item, AB, Hans. I was playing Lumberry and European, so I think this is the most comfort team for me this season, so that's the reason I bring it here.
Excellent. Seems to be doing really well for you. So as you said, you're kind of like, your day 2 is kind of locked up, as it were. You've got so many championship points. How many have you got?
Like 750,
750. That's like, that's 3 times a Worlds Invite. Yeah. That's huge already. Yeah. Do you plan to go to more events after today?
So maybe North America. I want to go there. I have the travel hour also. So this is and North American Internationals is one of the, I think it's the biggest tournament of this season, maybe of all time. And it's nice to play there because you can test for worlds. It's not the same meta game, but you know, you play against other big players. So that's one of the reasons I want to go there. But I won't go to Turin. So this is my last European tournament.
Last European tournament, yeah, fair enough. Okay. And for the North American International Championship, have you got any particular players in mind that you kind of really like to face that you kind of don't often get to face here in Europe?
It's always fine to face Joey.
Yeah, sure. Okay, yeah.
He's so good. Yeah.
Yeah, he's an incredible player.
Also Wolf, and yeah, there are a lot of great players. Justin Tang.
Okay.
Yeah, I want to face them.
All right. Okay. If you're watching Justin Town, Wolf, etc., then like watch out because Eric hasn't prepped much and he's super tired. He's already 2-0. So I'm sure you'll do excellent there as well. And finally, one last question. You obviously still got so many championship points and day 2's kind of locked up. So looking for the travel award for kind of the next potential international championship. Whereabouts are you in that at the moment?
So I am 110.
110.
CPs with online tournaments, so depends on how it goes this weekend. Maybe some locals didn't play anything, so yeah, depends on North American, I think.
Fair enough.
Because I will go to Turin, so.
Yeah. Okay. And favorite partner Pokemon that you kind of like start with the start of any old game? You got a particular favorite that you have?
Iron Hands.
Iron Hands, love it. Okay. And finally, any shout outs, Eric, that you'd like to give?
Yeah, I want to shout out all my family, friends that always have supported me, Twitch subscribers, everyone who has supported me. Yeah.
Fantastic. Okay. Well, Eric, it's been lovely having you on the couch. Maybe we'll see you in the future, today or maybe tomorrow even, depending on how you do.
Who knows? Hopefully.
Hopefully, yes, exactly. Well, for now, we're going to hand it back over to a short little break, and we should shortly be back with your round 3 very soon.